The Imperial First Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system, with the confidence of conquerors. War Master Keldon stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical displays show empty space where human ships should be waiting to defend their territory. "Spread the fleet in battle formation," he ordered his officers. "Begin scanning for enemy vessels. These humans are probably hiding behind their planets, hoping we'll give up and leave." His tactical officer, a spider-like creature with multiple eyes, clicked its mandibles nervously. "Sir, our sensors aren't detecting any ships at all. Not even civilian traffic. It's like the entire system is empty." Keldon growled low in his throat. In 40 years of conquest, he had never encountered a species that simply disappeared when the Empire arrived. Usually primitive civilizations either fled in terror or made desperate attacks that the Imperial forces easily crushed. What he didn't know was that Captain Bei Hyunwoo was watching his every move from the stealth destroyer Ghost Strike, positioned less than 500 meters from the Imperial flagship. The human vessel's advanced cloaking technology made it completely invisible to alien sensors. "They're confused," Hyunwoo whispered to his crew. "Send a tight beam message to command. Tell them the Empire has taken the bait." The Ghost Strike wasn't alone. Throughout the outer system, dozens of human ships watched and waited in perfect silence. Each vessel was invisible to Imperial technology, built using stealth systems developed during humanity's bloody wars on Earth. On the fourth moon of Jupiter, Lieutenant Commander Onari crouched behind a storage container in the human mining facility. Around her, 30 Terran Marines prepared their weapons and equipment. They had been waiting in the abandoned base for 3 days, knowing the Empire would eventually try to establish a foothold here. "Movement on the horizon," reported Sergeant Yoon Donghyuk through his helmet radio. "Imperial dropships incoming. Looks like a full battalion." Onari checked her rifle and activated her suit's tactical display. The plan was simple but brutal. Let the aliens land and start setting up their base, then hit them hard and fast when they least expected it. The Imperial forces landed with the efficiency of a well-trained military. Alien soldiers in powered armor moved quickly to secure the mining facility, while engineers began setting up communication arrays and defensive positions. Within 2 hours, they had established a small but strong foothold on the moon. Commander Talvek, leader of the Imperial ground forces, felt satisfied with their progress. His species had conquered dozens of worlds using these same tactics: secure a strategic location, establish a base, then expand outward until the enemy surrendered or was destroyed. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're getting strange readings from the mining tunnels. Could be equipment left behind by the humans." "Send a squad to investigate," Talvek ordered. "We need to know what kind of technology these primitives have been using." That was exactly what Onari had been waiting for. As the alien patrol entered the tunnel system, her Marines moved into position. The humans had spent weeks preparing these tunnels, turning them into a deadly maze of traps and ambush points. Sergeant Yoon led the first strike team through maintenance shafts that the aliens didn't even know existed. His squad emerged behind the Imperial patrol, cutting off their escape route while Onari's team attacked from the front. The battle was swift and brutal. Imperial soldiers were trained for open warfare, using energy shields and heavy weapons to overwhelm their enemies. But in the tight confines of the mining tunnels, their advantages meant nothing. The humans moved like ghosts through passages they knew by heart, striking fast and disappearing before the aliens could respond. "Fall back to the main chamber," the Imperial squad leader shouted, but there was nowhere to go. Every tunnel led to another ambush. Every corridor held more human soldiers. Within minutes, the entire patrol was wiped out. On the surface, Commander Talvek watched his tactical display with growing alarm as his squad's signals disappeared one by one. "What's happening down there?" he demanded. His answer came in the form of explosions throughout the base. Onari's demolition teams had spent days placing charges in strategic locations, and now they triggered them all at once. Communications arrays collapsed, power generators exploded, and defensive positions crumbled. The human Marines emerged from the tunnels like demons from underground, their black armor making them nearly invisible in the smoke and darkness. They moved with a precision that terrified the alien soldiers, who had never faced an enemy this organized and ruthless. Corporal Song Yoonji's squad hit the Imperial command post with plasma grenades and automatic weapons fire. The aliens had superior shields and armor, but the humans had superior tactics and knowledge of the terrain. Every shot was aimed at weak points in alien equipment. Every attack targeted critical systems. These aren't primitives, Talvek shouted into his radio as his soldiers fell around him. They're fighting like veterans. Request immediate backup. But backup wouldn't come. Throughout the outer system, Captain Lee Yuna's reconnaissance ships had been shadowing Imperial vessels, feeding targeting data to hidden human weapons platforms. As the alien fleet tried to respond to the attack on Jupiter's moon, they found themselves under assault from enemies they couldn't see. The stealth ship Shadow Walker struck first, launching missiles at an Imperial cruiser from point-blank range. The alien vessel's shields flared and collapsed as human weapons, designed specifically to penetrate Imperial. Defenses tore through its hull, target destroyed, reported weapons officer Choi Minji from her console. Moving to secondary target. Captain Yuna watched her tactical display as more human ships revealed themselves throughout the system. Each attack was precisely timed and perfectly executed. The Imperial fleet, spread out to search for enemies, found themselves picked apart one ship at a time. War Master Khaldun realized too late that his forces had walked into a carefully prepared trap. All ships form defensive positions. Concentrate our firepower. But it was already over. The humans had been studying Imperial tactics for decades, and they knew exactly how their enemies would respond to every situation. As the alien fleet tried to regroup, human ships struck at their weak points with surgical precision. On Jupiter's moon, the few surviving Imperial soldiers huddled in the ruins of their base. Commander Talvek, wounded and desperate, managed to send one final message before human soldiers overran his position. Command, this is Talvek. The humans, they're not what we thought. They've been planning this. They knew we were coming. They're dangerous. More dangerous than anything we've ever fought. The transmission cut off as Sergeant Yoon's team reached the command post. Nari stood over the captured alien equipment, already thinking about the intelligence value of what they had recovered. By the end of the day, the Imperial First Fleet was in full retreat. Of the 120 ships that had entered Sol system, fewer than 40 escaped to tell what they had witnessed. The humans had lost 3 vessels. In the war room beneath Earth, Admiral Taehyun received the battle reports with quiet satisfaction. The first phase of Operation Thunderstorm was complete. The Empire now knew that humanity was willing to fight, but they still had no idea what they were truly facing. Send a message to Imperial Command, he told Commander Han. Tell them this was their final warning. The next Imperial fleet that enters our space won't be allowed to leave. The war had begun and humanity had drawn first blood. The Imperial Palace had never seen such chaos. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy as word of the Grand Armada's destruction spread. Chancellor Vexter sat in his throne room, surrounded by panicking advisors and military leaders who could barely believe what had happened. Over 1,000 ships, whispered War Master Khaldun, one of the few commanders to survive the massacre at Sol. The humans destroyed over 1,000 ships and we barely scratched their defenses. They have weapons we can't even understand. Chancellor Vextar's forearms trembled with a mixture of rage and fear. In 3,000 years of Imperial expansion, no enemy had ever inflicted such a devastating defeat on their forces. The humans hadn't just won a battle. They had shattered the Empire's image of invincibility. What do we do? Asked Trade Minister Yelka, her voice barely above a whisper. Our economy depends on the threat of military force. If other species learn that we can be defeated. The Chancellor's aide, Communications Officer Torval, entered the chamber with urgent news. Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the humans. This one is addressed directly to you. On the main screen, Admiral Quan Minho appeared. The human commander looked tired but determined, his uniform bearing the marks of recent combat. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship showed the quiet efficiency of a military force that had just achieved total victory. Chancellor Vextar, Minho began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Your Grand Armada has been destroyed. Your forces are broken and fleeing. You have one chance to avoid the complete annihilation of your civilization. You will accept our terms, or you will face the full might of humanity. The terms that followed were unlike anything in the Empire's history. No defeated enemy had ever been in a position to dictate such comprehensive conditions to their conquerors. First, Minho continued. The Empire will establish an exclusion zone of 200 light-years around Sol system. No Imperial vessel of any kind will enter this space. Any ship found in violation will be destroyed without warning. 200 light-years. That was dozens of star systems, many of them containing valuable resources and trade routes. The economic impact alone would cripple several Imperial sectors. Second, the Empire will provide tribute to Earth in the form of strategic materials and technology. The amounts and specifications will be transmitted separately. These deliveries will continue indefinitely, and any interruption will be considered an act of war. Chancellor Vextar wanted to refuse, to rage against these impossible demands, but the reports from his military commanders left no room for negotiation. The humans had demonstrated technological superiority that bordered on the supernatural. Third Admiral Minho said, his expression growing even more stern. The Empire will submit to regular inspections by Terran forces to ensure compliance with these terms. Our ships will patrol Imperial space to monitor your activities and prevent any buildup of forces that might threaten human interests. The most humiliating condition was yet to come. Finally, the Empire will formally acknowledge Terran sovereignty over all territories within our designated sphere of influence. Any expansion of human space will be accepted without challenge or resistance. The transmission ended, leaving the Imperial leadership in stunned silence. These weren't the terms of a peace treaty between equals. This was the complete subjugation of the Empire by a species they had considered primitive just weeks ago. Captain Lee Yuna commanded the first Terran patrol fleet to enter Imperial space. Her ships, led by the Shadow Walker, crossed the border with the calm confidence of absolute military superiority. Behind her flew a squadron of vessels that had been invisible to Imperial sensors just days before. "Captain," reported her intelligence officer Choi Minji, "we're detecting massive fleet movements throughout Imperial space. Their ships are pulling back from the border zones." "Good," Yuna replied. "Send a message to all Imperial vessels in this sector. Remind them that our orders are to destroy any ship that even appears threatening." The fear in Imperial space was palpable. Ship captains who had once terrorized weaker species now fled at the first sign of human vessels. The psychological impact of the Sol System massacre had spread throughout the Empire like a virus, destroying morale and combat effectiveness. On Earth, Dr. Seo Min-jae stood in his laboratory, surrounded by holographic displays showing the next generation of human weapons. The war had accelerated research programs that had been theoretical just months before, and the results were beyond anything the Empire could imagine. "The quantum disintegration arrays are ready for deployment," he reported to Fleet Admiral Kim Tae-hyun during their weekly briefing. One ship equipped with these weapons could destroy an entire Imperial fleet without taking damage. Tae-hyun nodded approvingly. "How many ships can we equip with this technology?" "All of them, sir. Production is already underway. Within a year, every human vessel will be armed with weapons that make our current systems look primitive." The Admiral smiled grimly. The Empire thought they had seen humanity's full capabilities during the Battle of Sol System. They had no idea what was coming next. Commander Ryu Seung-jin patrolled the outer boundaries of Imperial space aboard his heavy cruiser, now equipped with the latest human technology. His sensors could detect and track every Imperial ship within 50 light-years, and his weapons could destroy them faster than their crews could send a distress signal. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "Imperial Command is requesting permission to move a supply convoy through Sector 7. They claim it's routine maintenance supplies for their mining stations." Ryu studied the intelligence reports on his screen. The convoy appeared legitimate, but human intelligence had learned to be suspicious of everything the Empire did. "Denied," he decided. "Tell them to find another route. If they have a problem with that, they can file a formal complaint with Terran Command." The frustration in Imperial space was growing daily. Trade routes that had been used for centuries were now closed to Imperial ships. Military vessels found themselves constantly shadowed by human patrols that could destroy them at any moment. The Empire's authority was crumbling as species, after species realized that their former masters were now terrified. Of a single human fleet, Admiral Park Soo-hyun commanded the Terran occupation, force from the massive space station that humans had built at the edge of Imperial space. The facility was larger than most Imperial cities and armed with weapons that could sterilize entire planets. "Admiral," her aide Commander Han reported, We're receiving surrender requests from 17 more star systems. They want to join the Terran sphere rather than remain part of the Empire. Accept their applications, Park ordered. Have intelligence teams survey their systems for strategic value. If they can contribute to our expansion, we'll provide them with protection. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting rapidly. What had started as humanity's defense against Imperial aggression was becoming something much larger. Species throughout the galaxy were abandoning the Empire in favor of human protection, recognizing that the future belonged to whoever controlled the most advanced technology. In his private chambers on Earth, Admiral Minho received regular reports from across human space. The war was over, but the consequences were still unfolding. Every day brought news of Imperial defeats, defections, and the steady expansion of human influence. Captain Kim Ji-ho's strategic analysis ships provided constant updates on Imperial fleet movements and political developments. Their reports painted a picture of an empire in terminal decline, unable to cope with the new reality of human supremacy. "Sir," Commander Han Soo-young briefed him during their morning meeting, "our deep space monitors are detecting Imperial ships abandoning their outer territories. They're pulling everything back to core systems." "Let them," Minho replied. "The more they consolidate, the easier it will be to monitor their activities. And the more space they abandon, the more room we have to expand." The final phase of Operation Thunderstorm was proceeding exactly as planned. Humanity had never intended simply to defend themselves against the Empire. They had been preparing for galactic dominance, and the Imperial attack had given them the perfect excuse to begin their expansion. Dr. Seo Min-jae's research teams were already working on technologies that would make human expansion unstoppable. Faster-than-light communication systems, matter conversion technology, and weapons that could destroy entire solar systems were moving from theoretical to practical. "How long until we can begin Phase 2 of the expansion?" Admiral Taehyun asked during their weekly research briefing. 6 months for the first wave of colony ships, Seo replied. 18 months for full-scale expansion fleets. The Empire won't be able to stop us even if they wanted to try. As the months passed, the galaxy watched in amazement and terror as humanity consolidated their victory. Imperial space shrank daily as more systems declared independence or requested human protection. Trade routes shifted to favor human interests, and advanced human technology began appearing in markets across the galaxy. The empire that had once ruled half the known universe found itself reduced to a collection of core worlds, surrounded by human patrols and dependent on Terran approval for their most basic activities. In the depths of the Imperial Intelligence Center, Analysis Officer Kethron stared at the captured human communications with growing horror. What his translation computers were showing him seemed impossible, but the evidence was overwhelming. The humans hadn't been caught off guard by the Empire's arrival. They had been waiting for it. "Director," he called to his supervisor, "you need to see this immediately." Director Vashati glided over on her serpentine lower body, her multiple eyes focusing on the data screens. As she read the translated messages, her scaled skin changed color from calm blue to alarmed red. "These communications are dated over 200 years ago," she whispered. "They're discussing preparations for a war with the Empire. But we only detected this species 3 months ago." Catherine nodded nervously. "It gets worse, Director. According to these files, they've been monitoring our communications for over 50 years. They know everything about us: ship designs, weapon systems, tactical doctrines, even our command structure." On Earth, intelligence analyst Moon Ji-hoon was briefing the Terran High Command on what they had learned from captured Imperial vessels. The war room was packed with admirals and generals, all listening intently as he revealed the scope of humanity's intelligence operations. "Project Looking Glass has been our most successful intelligence program," he explained, gesturing to the holographic displays around the room. "For 5 decades, we've been intercepting and decoding Imperial communications from across the galaxy. We know their fleet positions, their supply lines, their political structure, even their personal communications." Fleet Admiral Kim Tae-hyun studied the data with satisfaction. The Looking Glass project had been his idea, proposed when he was just a young commander fresh out of the academy. The concept was simple. If humanity was going to survive in a hostile galaxy, they needed to know everything about their potential enemies. "How much do they know about us?" asked Admiral Park Soo-hyun. "Almost nothing," Moon replied. "While we were studying them, they ignored us completely. To the Empire, we were just another primitive species in the Outer Rim, not worth their attention. Dr. Seominje stepped forward, his face grim. That ignorance is about to cost them everything. Admiral, I recommend we proceed with Operation Revelation. It's time to show the Empire what they're really fighting. In space above Earth, Captain Kim Ji-ho received new orders aboard his command ship, the strategic cruiser Foresight. His vessel was equipped with the most advanced computers in the human fleet, capable of processing vast amounts of tactical data in real time. Tactical Officer Bang, activate the prediction matrix, he ordered. Tactical Officer Bang Daeon's fingers flew across her control panel as she brought the ship's most secret system online. For months, human computers had been analyzing Imperial combat patterns, learning to predict enemy movements with frightening accuracy. Matrix online, Captain, she reported. We now have tactical prediction capabilities for the entire Imperial fleet. What happened next seemed like magic to the alien commanders. Every time an Imperial ship moved to attack, human forces were already in position to counter them. Every tactical maneuver the Empire attempted was met by perfectly timed human responses. War Master Keldun, now commanding what remained of the Imperial forces after their Supreme Commander's death, watched in growing panic as his carefully planned attacks were defeated again and again. How are they doing this? He demanded of his tactical officer. It's like they know what we're going to do before we do it. His aide, a young officer named Telmore, had been studying the human response patterns. Sir, I think they do know. Look at these battle records. Every time we change tactics, they adapt immediately. It's like they've been studying our methods for years. That's impossible, Keldun growled. We've never fought these humans before. But even as he spoke, the War Master was beginning to understand the terrible truth. Humanity hadn't stumbled into this war. They had been preparing for it longer than anyone in the Empire could imagine. On the bridge of the attack carrier Vengeance, Commander Ryu Sung-jin prepared to deploy humanity's most closely guarded secret. His ship carried weapons that had been developed in absolute secrecy, known only to a handful of scientists and military leaders. Dr. Lee, are the planet killer missiles ready for deployment? He asked. Dr. Lee Min-seok, the weapons chief designer, nodded grimly from his station. The stellar disruption warheads are armed and ready. One shot will be enough to destroy their staging area completely. The Empire had established a massive forward base on a moon in the outer system, using it to coordinate their attacks and resupply their ships. It was protected by shields powerful enough to withstand conventional weapons, and defended by dozens of warships, but the weapon Commander Ryu was about to use wasn't conventional. Target locked, reported his weapons officer. Stellar disruption missile ready to fire. Fire, Ryu ordered. The missile that left the Vengeance looked no different from a standard human torpedo, but its warhead contained technology that could affect the fundamental forces that held matter together. When it struck the Imperial base, the explosion didn't just destroy the facility. It consumed it, along with the moon it was built on and every ship, within 100,000 kilometers. The Imperial fleet watched in stunned silence as an entire celestial body simply vanished in a burst of energy that outshone the local star. Where there had been a moon and a military base, there was now nothing but expanding gas and debris. By the void, whispered an Imperial communications officer. They have weapons that can destroy moons. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Imperial ship captains, who had joined this war expecting to crush a primitive species, now realized they were fighting an enemy with technology beyond their understanding. War Master Keldun stared at the empty space where the moon had been, his mind struggling to process what he had witnessed. Send a message to the homeworlds, he said quietly. Tell them we need to reconsider our position. But it was already too late for reconsideration. Throughout the Sol system, human ships were revealing capabilities that the Empire had never imagined possible. Stealth technology that made vessels completely invisible, weapons that could destroy planets, and tactical systems that seemed to predict the future. Captain Lee Yuna aboard the Shadow Walker coordinated the final phase of the battle from her position near Jupiter. Her reconnaissance ships had been gathering intelligence throughout the engagement, and now she transmitted the most important message of the war. Command, this is Shadow Walker. The Empire's fleet is broken. They're trying to retreat, but they're in complete disorder. We can end this now. Admiral Minho's response came immediately. All ships pursue and destroy. Show them no mercy. The retreat became a massacre. Imperial ships designed for conquering weaker civilizations found themselves hunted through the solar system by human vessels that seemed to anticipate their every move. Superior numbers meant nothing when the enemy could predict your actions and counter them perfectly. Dr. Co. Minjae watched the battle reports from his laboratory deep within Earth's crust. Around him, scientists worked on projects that would make today's devastating weapons look primitive by comparison. The war had accelerated human technological development beyond anything the species had achieved before. "How long until the next generation of weapons is ready?" asked his assistant. 6 months, Co replied. "By then, we'll have capabilities that will make the Empire's current technology look like stone tools." As the last Imperial ships fled the Sol system, leaving behind the wreckage of their Grand Armada, a new message was broadcast across all frequencies. Admiral Minho's face appeared on screens throughout the galaxy, his voice carrying to every Imperial world. "This message is for the leaders of the Galactic Trade Empire," he said calmly. "You have seen what happens when you ignore our warnings. You came to our system with 1,200 ships. Fewer than 200 will return home. This is not our full strength. This is not our best technology. This is simply what we were willing to reveal to make our point." He paused, letting the implications sink in across the galaxy. Humanity has been preparing for this war for over 2 centuries. Every weapon you've seen today is obsolete compared to what we're building tomorrow. Every tactic we used is just the beginning of what we're capable of. You wanted to test our resolve. Now you know the price of that test. The transmission ended, leaving the Empire to contemplate the magnitude of their miscalculation. They had awakened something in the darkness between stars, something that had been watching them and learning their weaknesses for longer than any of them had realized. Chancellor Vextar's rage shook the walls of the Imperial Palace as he watched the reports from the Sol system. His first fleet, the pride of the Empire, had been humiliated by a species they had dismissed as primitive. The losses were catastrophic, and worse, the survivors spoke of human tactics and technology that seemed impossible. "Enough," he roared at the assembled War Council. "I don't care if we have to burn every human world to ash. No one defies the Empire and lives to tell about it." Supreme Fleet Commander Zekthara, the Empire's most experienced military leader, studied the battle reports with cold calculation. Her species had conquered half the galaxy through careful planning and overwhelming force, and she had never lost a major engagement. "Chancellor, we underestimated them," she said in her gravelly voice. "But we won't make that mistake again. I'm mobilizing the Grand Armada. Every ship, every warrior, every weapon we have. 1,200 vessels from all member worlds. The Grand Armada was the Empire's ultimate weapon, a force so massive it had never been fully deployed against a single enemy. The last time it had assembled, 3 star systems had surrendered without firing a shot. On Earth, deep space monitoring stations detected the massive fleet movement within hours. Admiral Quan Minho stood in the observatory of Aegis Station, humanity's largest orbital fortress, watching the tactical displays with his senior commanders. 1,200 ships, said Admiral Park Soo-hyun, commander of the heavy battle group. Her scarred face showed no fear, only determination. That's everything they have. They're betting the entire Empire on this assault. Admiral Jian Wushik of the Carrier Division ran calculations on his portable computer. Our intelligence estimates put their total firepower at 15 times our maximum output. In a straight fight, they'll crush us in minutes. Then we don't fight straight, replied Admiral Nahyejin from the Fast Attack Corps. Her ships were the smallest in the human fleet, but also the fastest and most maneuverable. We use the asteroid fields, the gravity wells, everything the system has to offer. Minho nodded approvingly. These officers had trained together for decades, preparing for exactly this scenario. Signal all ships. Operation Thunderstorm moves to Phase 2. We're going to show the Empire what happens when you corner a human. Captain Lim Doyen received the orders aboard his battlecruiser Retribution as it patrolled the outer rim of the asteroid belt. His ship was one of humanity's most powerful warships, armed with weapons that had been designed specifically to kill Imperial vessels. All hands. This is the captain, he announced over the ship's communication system. The Empire is sending everything they have to destroy us. Our job is to make sure they regret it. Battle stations. The crew of the Retribution had been preparing for this moment their entire careers. Every system had been tested and retested. every weapon calibrated for maximum effectiveness against Imperial shields and armor. They knew the odds, but they also knew something the Empire didn't. Humans fought differently when their backs were against the wall. In the experimental shipyard, hidden deep within the asteroid belt, Captain Shin Yejin made final preparations aboard the TDS Quantum Lance. Her vessel was humanity's most advanced ship, equipped with technology so secret that even most human commanders didn't know it existed. Dr. Seo, are the quantum weapons ready? She asked the chief scientist. Dr. Seo Minjae, head of the Terran Research Division, nodded from his position at the weapon control station. The quantum disruptors are online and calibrated. We'll only get one shot with this prototype, but if it works, we can take out their entire command ship. The Quantum Lance represented 20 years of human research into exotic physics. While the Empire relied on energy weapons and kinetic projectiles, humanity had learned to weaponize the fundamental forces of the universe itself. The Grand Armada arrived in Sol System like a storm of metal and death. Supreme Fleet Commander Zekthara commanded from her massive dreadnought, a ship larger than most human cities. Around her, hundreds of alien vessels spread out in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready. "Begin the assault," she ordered. "I want every human ship destroyed and every human world burned. Leave nothing alive." The Empire's attack began with a bombardment that lit up space like a miniature sun. Energy beams and missile swarms filled the void between planets, seeking human targets that seemed to vanish the moment Imperial sensors locked onto them. But the humans weren't running. They were leading their enemies exactly where they wanted them. Commander An Gi-hyun piloted his fighter through the asteroid field with skills that seemed superhuman to his alien opponents. His squadron of 12 ships danced between rocks the size of mountains, drawing Imperial fighters deeper into the maze of stone and metal. "Phoenix Squadron, this is Phoenix Leader," he called to his pilots. "Remember the plan. Make them think we're running scared, then lead them into the trap." The Imperial fighters followed eagerly, their superior speed and firepower making them confident of victory. They had fought dozens of species across the galaxy, and none had ever matched their skill in space combat, but they had never fought humans. Major Jung Seora watched from her position aboard a hidden weapons platform as the enemy fighters entered the kill zone. Around her, automated defense systems came online, their targeting computers loaded with detailed information about Imperial ship designs and flight patterns. "All stations, weapons free," she commanded. The asteroid field erupted in explosions as hidden human weapons opened fire from every direction. What the Empire had thought was empty space was actually a carefully prepared battlefield. With human forces positioned at every strategic point, Imperial fighters found themselves trapped in a crossfire from enemies they couldn't see. Commander An's squadron, now reinforcing the fixed defenses, struck with precision that seemed impossible in the chaotic environment of the asteroid field. "How are they doing this?" demanded an Imperial pilot as his wingman's ship exploded beside him. "They're flying like they know every rock in this field personally." They did. Human pilots had been training in the Sol System's asteroid fields for their entire careers, learning to use the environment as a weapon. Every rock, every gravitational anomaly, every patch of shadow was a tool in their arsenal. On the bridge of her dreadnought, Supreme Fleet Commander Zekthara watched her fighter squadrons being systematically destroyed. "Deploy the heavy assault cruisers. Clear those asteroids with main battery fire." But even as her massive ships moved forward, Captain Lim Do-hyun's battle cruiser Retribution struck from an unexpected angle. The human ship emerged from behind a large asteroid, its weapons already firing at point-blank range. The Imperial cruiser's shields flared and collapsed under the concentrated barrage of human weapons. Explosions rippled along its hull as armor plates vaporized under the assault. Within seconds, the alien vessel was a drifting wreck. "Target destroyed," reported Weapons Officer Bang Daeyeon from her console. "Moving to next target." The Retribution vanished back into the asteroid field before the Empire could respond, leaving behind only wreckage and confusion. Throughout the battle zone, similar attacks were happening as human ships used their superior knowledge of the terrain to strike and fade like ghosts. But the Empire's numbers were beginning to tell. Despite their losses, they still had over 1,000 ships, and they were slowly grinding through the human defenses through sheer weight of fire. That's when Captain Shin Yejin made her move. The quantum lance emerged from its hiding place deep in the asteroid field, its experimental weapons charging with energy that made space itself seem to ripple. Dr. Siominje monitored the weapon systems with intense concentration, knowing that humanity's survival might depend on this single shot. "Target locked," he reported. "Quantum disruptors ready to fire." "Fire," Shin ordered. The weapon that struck the Imperial dreadnought didn't behave like any energy beam the aliens had ever seen. Instead of simply burning through armor and shields, it seemed to unweave the very atoms of the target ship. The massive vessel simply came apart at the molecular level, dissolving into component particles in a matter of seconds. Supreme Fleet Commander. Zekthara had just enough time to realize what was happening before her flagship ceased to exist. The destruction of the command ship sent shockwaves through the Imperial fleet. Without their Supreme Commander, coordination began to break down. Individual ship captains found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't predict against weapons they didn't understand. Admiral Minho watched from Aegis Station as the tide of battle slowly began to turn. The Empire still outnumbered humanity by a massive margin, but their advantage was slipping away ship by ship. "Signal all units," he commanded. "Phase 3 begins now. It's time to show them what we're really capable of." The bridge of the TDS Indomitable hummed with quiet energy as Admiral Quan Minho stood before the main screen. His gray uniform bore the scars of countless battles, and his weathered face showed no emotion as he prepared to address the most powerful force in the galaxy. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations with practiced efficiency. They all knew this moment would change everything. "Communications, are we broadcasting to all Imperial frequencies?" Minho asked. "Yes, sir," replied Lieutenant Park Jinwoo from his console. "Every major station, fleet, and colony world in the Empire will receive this message." Minho nodded and stepped forward. The recording light blinked red, and he began to speak in a calm, steady voice that had commanded respect across the Terran fleet for over 20 years. "This is Admiral Quan Minho of the Terran Defense Fleet, speaking on behalf of humanity and the government of Earth. We are sending this message to inform you that Terran space is now closed to all Imperial vessels. This includes the Sol system and all territories within 50 light-years of Earth. Any Imperial ship that crosses into our space will be considered an act of war against humanity." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. On distant worlds across the galaxy, alien leaders would soon be watching this transmission with confusion and anger. "We have marked the boundaries of our territory clearly. Your ships will find navigation beacons at every entry point. There will be no warnings after this one. Stay out of Terran space and there will be peace between us. Cross our borders, and you will face the full might of the human race." The message ended and Minho turned away from the screen. His communications officer looked up at him with concern. "Sir, do you think they'll take us seriously?" "No," Minho replied quietly, "but they'll learn to." 3,000 light-years away in the golden halls of the Imperial Palace, Chancellor Vextar watched the human transmission with growing fury. His forearms gestured wildly as he spoke to the assembled council members. "Did you see this insult?" he roared, his voice echoing off the crystal walls. "Some primitive species from the Outer Rim dares to threaten the Empire. They've barely learned to travel between stars and they think they can challenge us." War Master Keldun, a massive creature covered in natural armor, leaned forward in his chair. "My scouts report they have fewer than 200 ships in their entire fleet. We could crush them with a single battle group." "Then do it," Vextar commanded. "Send the first fleet to this Sol system. Show these humans what happens when insects try to sting giants." On Earth, deep beneath the mountains of the Terran Command Center, Fleet Admiral Kim Taehyun stood in the war room. Holographic displays surrounded him, showing the positions of every human ship in space. Commander Han Soo-young approached with a data pad in her hands. "Admiral, our deep space sensors are picking up Imperial fleet movements. 3 battle groups are heading toward our territory. They should reach the outer markers in 6 days." Taehyun studied the displays showing the approaching alien forces. Each Imperial battle group contained over 100 ships, heavily armed and crewed by warriors from across the galaxy. Against them, humanity could field perhaps 50 vessels in the outer system. "Signal all fleet commanders," he said calmly. "Operation Thunderstorm begins now." Captain Lee Yuna received the signal aboard her ship, the TDS Shadow Walker, as it drifted silently in the darkness between stars. Her vessel was one of humanity's newest designs, built specifically for missions the enemy would never see coming. Around her, the bridge crew prepared their systems with quiet efficiency. "Yuna, we're getting movement on the Imperial channels," reported her intelligence officer, Choi Minji. "They're calling it a police action. They think this will be over quickly." Yuna smiled coldly. "Let them think that. Park, set course for the asteroid fields near Jupiter. We have work to do." As the Shadow Walker moved deeper into the solar system, Yuna thought about the years of preparation that had led to this moment. While the Empire had grown fat and comfortable, ruling the galaxy through superior numbers and advanced technology, humanity had spent decades studying their enemies. Every Imperial ship design, every weapon system, every tactical doctrine had been analyzed and countered. The humans had learned something important during their violent history on Earth. The strongest enemy could be defeated if you understood them better than they understood themselves. On the bridge of the Imperial flagship Conquest of Stars, War Master Khaldun studied the tactical displays showing the human solar system. His intelligence officers had provided detailed scans of the area. 9 planets, including the human homeworld, and millions of asteroids scattered throughout the system. "These humans have chosen poor ground for a battle," he told his tactical officer. "Their ships will have nowhere to hide in open space. We'll sweep through the system in hours." What Khaldun didn't know was that Captain Bae Hyunwoo and his stealth destroyer Ghost Strike were already watching his fleet from less than 1,000 kilometers away. The human ship's advanced stealth systems made it invisible to Imperial sensors, and its crew had been recording everything for the past 3 days. "They're spreading out just like we expected," Hyunwoo reported to his communications officer. "Send the data to command. The trap is set." Back in the war room, Admiral Taehyun watched as his carefully planned strategy began to unfold. For 50 years, humanity had known this day would come. Every ship in their fleet had been built for this specific war. Every officer had trained for this exact scenario. Every weapon had been designed to kill Imperial vessels. The approaching alien fleet outnumbered humanity's forces by more than 3-1, but numbers weren't everything. The humans had advantages their enemies couldn't imagine: complete knowledge of Imperial tactics, weapons specifically designed to penetrate alien shields, and most importantly, the element of surprise. "Admiral," Commander Han said softly, "the first Imperial fleet will reach our outer defenses in 18 hours. Taehyun nodded, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. "Then in 18 hours, the Empire will learn that humanity doesn't make empty threats. Signal all ships. Prepare for combat." Across human space, hundreds of crews received the same message. On Earth, in the orbital shipyards around Mars and in the hidden bases among the asteroids, humanity prepared for war. They had spent generations getting ready for this fight, and now it was finally time to show the galaxy what humans were truly capable of. The Empire had received their warning. Soon they would understand why they should have listened.